Hi everyone in English 2323, it's Dr. E and I'm here with your Week 8 instructional video. So I'm actually going to start in reverse a little bit just because I've already filmed the supplemental video that you will be watching. You need to watch it. And I had to cut it a little bit short, very abruptly, so be prepared for that because I needed it to be within the time frame that is 15 minutes, right? I didn't want to go beyond that. But I end with this idea of Doyle and Stevenson. Did they know each other? So I want you to read this quote and add it to the end of the next video. So strong was the resemblance that on reading Sherlock Holmes for the first time, another of Bell's students, Robert Louis Stevenson, wrote to Conan Doyle from Samoa. Only one thing troubles me. Can this be my old friend Joe Bell? So this kind of adds to the connections between Stevenson and Doyle, which is just interesting, especially because I'm asking you to connect those two this week, so I want you to think about that. Anyhow, let's jump into detail on what you're actually going to do this week and make sure again that you're taking some time to watch the supplemental video next. All right. So week 8 looks like this. We're just finishing Stevenson's Text, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So you're watching the videos. And I want you to note that I've actually canceled the work related to backpack just because you do have a written response that's due. It is worth 30 points. So this is one where the expectations are a bit higher because you did a previous written response. I've given you feedback. Please go in and take a look at that feedback. I'll show you a document that walks you through how to view my feedback. So the expectations are a little bit higher because you have a sense of the assignment, right? You have completed one, you've gotten the feedback on it, so we need to push ourselves a little bit more. I want you to invest more time in this one. So I just took away that pack-back discussion because I thought that, right before spring break, I wanted you to be able to have the time to get this done and get it done perhaps ahead of the deadline because spring break starts, right? So I don't want this kind of weighing you down as the start of spring break. Even if you have to work, you don't have a real break ahead aside from school, that's a break that you should take, right? All right, so you do have a written response that's due on Sunday as well as the participation quiz, okay? So you'll see two videos here. You're watching the first one now. I've included in review the written response template as well as the guidelines, so take some time to look over that, as well as how to view my feedback and turn it in. So if you look at this document, it just shows you where to go to click. So you go to, assignments in the course activities, you look at this area here, do not click this. This will just open what you submitted. You won't see anything there, so click this. It will take you to then this screen. I don't know why detail you have to click around a bunch, unfortunately, but you want to view turn it in grade mark. So you'll click on that and it may ask you to agree to the terms, so just agree to the terms. It's okay. And then you want to make absolutely sure that these icons are highlighted. So you want the blue to be turned on and the purple. The red will automatically be turned on, showing the similarity report. So where you've taken quotes or, there are things like headings where those appear in other classes, so those may be highlighted. Don't be worried about that. The only thing you should be worried about in terms of what's highlighted in red are things that are not in quotation marks or that are not commonly submitted by students, like headings, that kind of thing, because that indicates plagiarism, so you want to be very careful. So click the blue to see my feedback, and the purple is actually turn it in feedback. It's usually related to things like grammar. Okay, so review your first written response assignment and that feedback before starting on the second. All right, so when thinking about this week's written response, if you go to the assignment for it, there are some options, okay? So after reading, The Adventure of the Speckled Band, so we're going back to Doyle, and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which we're finishing this week, I want to do some comparison writing, some compare and contrast. So we don't want to just start comparing randomly because that can be really overwhelming. Oh, I want to connect this character from this text to the plot of this text. We need it to be equal. So when we're comparing, it needs to be apples to apples, not apples to oranges, right? I'll show you what I mean. All right, so before we even begin, let's narrow our focus. Okay, so what do you want to write about? So choose one of these topics below. So think about the time period. So if you want to write up and think about the time period, go back to the Victorian era chapter. And how did the time period for these texts impact how the authors wrote their stories? What about their lives in Edinburgh, right, or elsewhere impact what story they created? Author lives and influences, right? So how did the author's lives impact their stories, right? So this is more focused on the actual time period, what's developing at the time, what's going on in England, Scotland at the time, and then their lives and influences if you want to dig into that. So we need to support everything with quotes. So quote the Victorian era if you're looking into time period, bring in the biographies to quote to support your ideas about their lives. Remember, the biographies are not written by the author. Stevenson didn't write his own biography. Doyle didn't write his own biography. Just credit Greenblatt, the overall text editor. Or you can dig into literary terminology. So I've just narrowed the focus here a bit on characterization and imagery, so you can click this link if you want to do that. Okay, so when writing a compare and contrast essay, you want to give equal space to both texts, right? So if you apply Doyle's life to his short story, you'll need to do the same or similar amount of analysis in writing for Stevenson. So sometimes there's a tendency to, if you kind of liked one story more than the other, you want to write more about that one than the other. It needs to be equal. So if you have a paragraph about how Doyle's life impacts his text, you need another paragraph about how Stevenson's life impacts, right? So you need to do the similar amount of comparison, not have a lopsided, like, 4 paragraphs about Doyle and then 1 measly paragraph about Stevenson. That's not accurately or adequately comparing and contrasting, right? All right, strive for 4 to 5 paragraphs with supporting quotes in each. Recall that quotes are, they're there to support your ideas, so be picky. Choose those that are very important and not excessive. And I put here, follow this three-step process, which makes it a little bit more approachable. Introduce your quote, share the quote, explain the quote, right? So when I say 6 to 7 sentences per paragraph, some of that is taken up by introducing a quote, having the quote, explaining the quote. Don't assume that your audience understands how a quote is relevant. Don't just drop it into a paragraph. That's, as a reader, just super annoying, because then you're having to go back and reread and like, am I reading this correctly? Is this what they intend the quote to mean in relation to this idea? Make sure that you're offering an explanation and introducing a quote, and of course crediting the author. All right, so use the template and review the guidelines. I do want to offer just a few notes here, just in general, about the written response. So the first thing is breaking it down into this idea of writing about literature, because it's different, right? Writing about literature is a different kind of genre, a different kind of writing than most other academic writing, because we're digging into something in a very specific way. We have terminology that we may be utilizing. We have different approaches. We may be looking at biographies and lives or the time period, those things that you will choose from this week. So just know that if you feel more frustrated with this kind of writing than other writing, there's a reason. It is very different. Or if you are much more comfortable writing in this way than, writing in a different class, it's because it's very specific, right? Credit the author always. When in your feedback for Tennyson's work, I kept saying, bring Tennyson in. Tennyson is making these choices. Tennyson creates this character. Tennyson describes this. Bring in the author. It's not repetitive to do that. It is giving credit and making sure your audience is always thinking about that author making choices. Support your ideas with quotes always, right? Do not overquote. You don't need an excessive amount of quotes. Don't rely on quotes to fill up a paragraph. Only use the quotes that are reflecting and supporting your ideas, right? So if you're talking about Hyde as a character, bring in some of those little quotes that help support what you're identifying in terms of characterization, right? Push for analysis. And I shared this with some of you in your feedback from the first written response. Ask why and ask how. So why is this happening in the text? Why did Tennyson make these choices? Why did Doyle make these choices? Why did Stevenson? Why will push us to more analysis and move away from summary. Some of you may have relied a little bit on summary instead of kind of pushing beyond that, which is normal. That's how we mostly write in academic writing. So we need to push ourselves a bit more by asking why and thinking about the author, but also how. So if Doyle is using characterization in this way, how is he doing that? How is he writing this character to reflect this tone or this mood or this style? What choices is he making, right? So there's the why and the how. If you keep asking those throughout your paragraphs and thinking about the authors, you will have a rich and deep analysis, right? Which is what we want when it comes to literature, to move beyond that kind of summary. Can you tell I'm getting excited? I was really excited in doing the supplemental video about the text. I'm really excited thinking about reading your writing. So push for more, right? All right, please use the template. When we open a document at Professors, the first thing we see is the formatting. And if the formatting is all kinds of crazy and doesn't match the formatting style that we're supposed to have in the class, it gives us an impression of the writing, and that's not how it should be. Our impression should come directly from your ideas. I don't want to be sidetracked by making notes about, like, follow MLA format, use the template, right? This is just me offering that reminder. No judgment for any of you who didn't use the template in the past, but now's the time to get into the habit of making sure you're doing. I'm giving you the template. So use it. It's already set up. Of course, it's still your responsibility to double check that everything is correct, but especially because if you download the template, given your computer or program, it may shift some of the formatting. You can go in and double check that, okay? Push your ideas, writing 6 to 7 sentences per paragraph. Remember, some of that is introducing and explaining your quote, so don't be thrown or stressed by that. This is going to push some of you who tend to write 2 to 3 sentences in a paragraph. We need more than that for a full analysis, right? 2 to 3 sentences just isn't enough space to really show an analysis, right? Show an idea and support that idea with quotes from the text, right? Show what you know. All right. Watch the MLA video. This is it's available in the MLA help module. This is just a nice little reminder. I offer examples. Just take some time to watch it to make sure that you're following those guidelines, because again, the grading expectations are a bit higher. The quoting needs to be done correctly, those in-text citations. You do not need a works cited for this week's work. We'll move into works cited later. We're just focusing on quoting correctly. Shut down any negative narrative about your writing. If you're struggling, if you're a person who you feel like you have a tough time in writing generally, shut that narrative down. Give it a name. Maybe it's like Dolores Umbridge or somebody from the Harry Potter films. Tell it to shut up, right? And some of you don't have those narratives. You are, comfortable with your writing. You're comfortable with writing about literature. So that's great. This is for those of you who may not feel that way. Spring break is next week, so get excited and take this opportunity to complete some bonus work if you're able to. Now is the time. So some people have emailed because they're stressed, they have really stressful work schedules, they have kids who are sick, whatever the case may be. You may feel like you're behind, you may have missed assignments. Don't worry about what you've missed. The past is in the past. Let's not worry about going back and doing that work now, because we need to focus on the present, get caught up in the now. Work into the future in terms of doing some of those bonus assignments to make up for any credit you may have lost when you weren't able to submit something before. Okay, so don't get bogged down, think about the future. Okay, so let me also jump into our week 8. And so, I've basically gone over everything, and I put this here because time just feels so contorted and distorted right now. So I thought that was a pretty great kind of allusion to Dolly and, just that idea of time not meaning much or melting. So you do have the week 8 quiz, and that is going to come from the supplemental video. So watch that. It comes from this video. So just make sure you're taking some time. And again, if you can work ahead and get this stuff out of the way so you can enjoy as much of spring break as possible, that's awesome. But I will have a brief video for spring break, just offering some reminders. But good luck this week. Reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Y'all are doing a fantastic job. So well done. Keep it up.